Good evening, and welcome to another episode of The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Perry.
And I'm your host, David. Tonight we're talking about Season 7, Episode 3, Afterimage. Before we continue, you can find us on Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube as The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast.
That is correct. And as I say every single week, you should find us and follow us because we're great, we're awesome, we're a good time, and we bring you little facts about different things that are going on in space, basically, whenever we take a notion. Like today, for example, today is February 28th, 2025. And for all of you James Webb enthusiasts out there, you should know right now you can go and take a look at the website where they are giving a spectacular photo and video view of all seven planets that have aligned on the 28th. So if you go and take a look
What?
right now, you can see it. And if you go step outside, so if you're in an area where there's not a lot of light pollution, that is, you should be able to see the planets forming a nice kind of half crescent line of themselves out there. So yeah,
I
if you're
had no
interested,
idea.
take a look. Yeah,
That's amazing.
pretty pretty cool stuff that we get to see these days. So thank you, James Webb, and I am all tangled up here. So bear with me while I fix this.
Orient yourself. There you go.
There, much better. Note to self: wireless headset. There you go.
Yeah.
Um, Note to self: wireless headset. But yes, you can go and take a look right now. There are a lot of videos of it on YouTube, short clips on TikTok, and of course, like I said, the James Webb website has some spectacular images of it. In fact, they have a time lapse video where you can watch as it's like Jupiter rises, and you can see like all the planets popping up behind Jupiter in order. So it's
Wow.
pretty cool. So go take a look if you're interested.
It's funny, the idea of the planets aligning is a common trope in certain, like in the Hercules Disney movie, the
And
the
yeah,
aligning of the planets is what's going to set the Titans loose and all that. That's the plot. Hades wants to get them
notice
loosened.
notice it's always bad stuff. Like in all of the myths, legends, fairy tales, sci-fi. It's a sci-fi trope too.
Mhm.
Whenever the planets align to a certain degree, whatever it is, then something terrible is going to happen. Yeah, as cool as they try to make it right now, um, I'm not going anywhere. Like board up the house and stay indoors because this is when the super zombie apocalypse happens or whatever it is. So
Right.
yeah. But before we dive into this 153rd episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, we always have to do our little check-in, of course, over our week. So David, how has your week been?
Week's been good. Work was really good this week. First time I've had a really good week in a while, which is great. So the book I was reading this week, I started off with Crooked House by Agatha Christie, another one of her mystery stories. Um, she is just the queen of giving you one plot line going this way, and you think it's going this way, and like she even sets it up. She's like, "Here's the person that you think everyone thinks might be guilty, but there's something wrong." And just red herrings you all the way to the end, and then blasts you with a solution that is someone totally else. It's not like my favorite story, Crooked House. It wasn't like her best one, but in the part at the beginning of the book, she said that she had a fun time writing that one. Like it was in her mind for a while. The solution to that one is surprising and in some ways a bit darker even than some other ones. Not because of the way the murder happens, but the who done it. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's the solution of the
Mm.
who done it. So and then I started reading um, a biography of Robert Morris, who was the financier of the American Revolution. He was a great, merchant at the time that the revolution broke out, and so he got tapped as the guy to, bankroll basically the army and everything else. And it's really interesting to read about him because the American government didn't have its own finances. It couldn't tax anybody. All it could do was try and print money. But anytime you print money, anyone knows that just inflation immediately causes the value of the money to go away. So they needed people like Robert Morris to actually contribute their personal finances, their actual hard-earned money to control things. And because of all the secrecy they needed to engage in order to get weapons, they had to mask a lot of their activities as private sale. So Robert Morris's finances were like literally the finances of the country for the first several years during the revolution, which caused a bunch of criticisms of corruption. Like you're personally benefiting from the war. You're an arms dealer basically on behalf of yourself. And while on one angle that is true, but it just comes true also that they he's the guy who's doing all of the work. He's working in a public capacity using his private capacity to make things happen. So while in the modern day it would totally be corrupt how he did what he did, at the time it was very useful for him to be kind of double dealing for himself and the government in order to make things happen. But
I mean, that's an interesting way to think about that. Because I mean, would it really be corruption? Like, um, let's take Jeff Bezos.
sure,
He's incredibly rich and
yeah,
has more money than anyone ever, and you can
right,
debate whether or not he ever should have that much money or whatever, right? What if he suddenly decided, with his massive amounts of income, that he was going to start offsetting various, debts, right? Like
right,
the public school system, the the lunch, right? He just came out and said, paid, don't care, across the nation, paid.
right,
Now, obviously, the students are going to benefit from this, but he's able to do this because of his massive wealth. What if he does, and then he keeps doing things like that? You know, uh, Something else. I don't know, daycare across the nation, paid for by Jeff Bezos. And then
right,
like the benefit becomes like suddenly more people are paying attention to what he's doing and everything else. And then people start buying more from Amazon and working for Amazon and wanting jobs at Amazon, only doing things for Amazon because Amazon as his company and is the thing that's giving him the money. He keeps taking on these very public, very social problems and solving them for the masses.
right,
So I could see some people make an argument of this being corruption because it kind of feeds back into his system because more and more people are wanting to buy his product, but it's because he's doing this thing. So would we still look at that as corruption? Because
yeah.
because the way he would then be influencing a bit of control, right? Because we would then, yeah, I guess you could make the argument no one wants to piss off Jeff Bezos because they don't want him to stop paying for daycare and they don't want him to stop paying for school lunches and they don't want him to stop paying for whatever other
Right,
things that he picks up along the way, right?
right.
So would that be it?
Yeah, that's exactly the question. I mean, the reason I bring it up is because Thomas Paine wrote Common Sense, which is
Mhm.
the document that basically jump started the revolution. Like everyone read it. It was the most popular document in American history. Even to this day, other than the Bible, there's nothing that's ever sold more per capita than Common Sense did. But Thomas Paine was a black and white kind of dude, right and wrong. If you cross a line, he's going to call you out for it. And so he calls out Robert Morris for this double dealing. And he basically pisses everybody off because they're like, hey, man, he's trying to like help the country by doing what he's doing. Yes, we're looking the other way, but you're not helping us by getting all moralistic on the situation. We are definitely in a gray area, and so it's just fun to read. Like I read the Thomas Paine book about a year or two ago, the biography on him, and I mean, he was a great man in his own way, but he was very flawed. Robert Morris is gonna be—he's very flawed. He ends up in debtor's prison. That's how he ends up at the end of his life. Like he was this great financier all of his life, and then at the end of his life, he starts making bad plays and ends up in debtor's prison. So it's just fascinating to read the lives of these guys and how they did this and that. And what their flaws were. How do we compare to today? Like again, today he would be corrupt, no question about it. But at the time, you need a
I
guy who's
mean,
willing to do a thing or two.
yeah.
So
Well, I feel like we still are that way to a degree. We need people who are willing to do things to that degree, but I think the part that always screws people up ultimately is the reciprocity aspect of it. We wouldn't have a problem if, Jeff Bezos went and, started building or repairing bridges and roads that were broken down and whatever else. We wouldn't care that he, donated the funds or whatever to get those projects off the ground, right? But if suddenly it was, hey, I rebuilt all the roads that lead into your town, and now you're booming in tourism and everything else. So I want to set a factory up over there next to that pristine lake you got. Yeah, so yeah, that's the part that I feel like gets people in trouble
yeah,
and gets the ball rolling on the corruption part. No one
yeah,
seems to do anything from a truly um, morally object um, morally objective, altruistic stance, right? Just doing it because it's something that needs to be done and it's a positive good for the people,
right, right,
So that
yeah,
that's the hard part, and I think that goes with anything though.
right,
Um, yeah,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, as a conservative, the biggest problem for people who want to defend capitalism is what's called, or what we would call, crony capitalism, where the government is starting to favor people privately. The government is supposed to be the ref on the field, making sure everyone's playing fair. But as soon as the ref starts favoring one team or the other, or if the rules aren't very well defined, you have crony capitalism, which is what people hate, and that then people complain about capitalism, and you're like, well, if the idea is just trading here and there, you'd think it'd be fine. It's when anyway, it's when problems
yeah,
occur,
yeah,
and it's literally what's happening. Robert Morris was engaging in some pretty open crony capitalism, but he was doing it in the most like upright way possible.
yeah.
So he actually was a good dude. But yeah, anyway, I love the Founding Fathers. I also finished rewatching season one of Severance, which is great. Watched the first episode of season two, which is also great because they have to deal with the finale of season one, and that's just a very interesting idea. Like, what do you do about season one, and how do we start season two? And I know my parents, who are all caught up with the seasons two as it is, I remember them watching this first episode and talking about how interesting it was, and how like they wanted to talk about it, but I hadn't caught up yet. So now that I've caught up that far, hopefully I'll finish catching up this week, and I can talk about anything and everything. So
Okay.
yeah. How about you? What's up with you?
Well, I have just been still trying to make my way through all of the various things that I had started reading simultaneously and realizing that was a terrible idea, from the Constitution, the Federalist Papers, I did finish the Animorph series and then obviously The Expanse. It's just a lot of things that are just kind of like here, and it's like, okay, well, I'll read like a chapter in this one and then switch, and then oh, here's a chapter in this one, and so forth, So there's a lot of that. Also, I am gearing up for a new phase of training and weightlifting and so forth. I've been doing a lot of what, if you know anything about weightlifting at all, most people will do like two phases. You have your bulking and then your cutting phase, and I've kind of went overboard on my bulking phase, mainly because it was just more comfortable. You just don't have to do much. You show up, you lift, and you go, you're done. You know, there's not a whole lot of extra like cardio or stretching or any of this stuff that you have to do. But then when you get to your cutting phase, there is a lot of that because it's all about, again, trying to trim yourself down and to really maximize um, your muscle to fat ratio,
Hmm.
basically. So getting ready to start doing that. It's basically going to be about 6 weeks of really intensive training. It's 3 days a week. So we'll see how it goes. This will be my first time ever doing it. I mean, I've lifted off and on all my life, really. I feel like, but I've never done anything to this degree before, so this is my first time in the actual cutting phase of the thing. So if I'm really, like tired and out of it and cranky some days or whatever else, I'm apologizing to you in advance. All right, you know why. All right, this is going to take a lot to do. So
Right.
um, other than that, we have been in um, birthday season here in my family. The After the holidays, it's kind of just a whirlwind of birthdays. My birthday, my sister's birthday, my aunt, my mother, my daughter, several cousins, uncles, everybody falls within like from like February 15th all the way to like April 3rd. It's either every other day and then it kind of gets to like every week and then every other week and then we're finally done. It's a weird breakdown. Like I was February 24th, my sister's the 26th. I have a great aunt that was today the 2nd. My mother is the 4th. My daughter is the 6th. I've got nieces and nephews who are on the 15th. I've got an aunt and uncle somewhere there in there that's like the 8th and the 10th. And yeah, it's that
Party
for us.
City gets bloated with the Freeze family
Yeah.
coming by.
Yeah, after about, the second or third party, it's like no cake. Don't bring cake. Everybody's caked out, and it's what can we do now to make this interesting? Oh God, we have another dinner, or we got another, whatever. So it's just like, how do you make it? So um, it was always so funny because when I was growing up, when I would tell people about this and how many people we had who had birthdays during this time, it was always like, "What's wrong with your family? Like, why is everybody born like around that time? What's going on?" I was like, we're a military family. Figure it out. What do you think was happening? Like track back about 9 months. What was happening? Oh, it was dudes coming back from deployment and seeing their wives for the first time. Have at it. What do you think was happening? You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very interesting that we how it works out. But I'm like any family, you can track them and figure this stuff out. No big
Yeah.
deal.
Mhm.
But we're not here to talk about all those things as we are now entering almost 20 minutes of our show. We are talking about Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I will say, since Vincent brought it up in our chat, beware of the Ides of March. That is a true thing. We don't joke about that around here. All right. I don't do anything on the Ides, by the way. I don't go outside on the Ides. I don't work on the Ides. Perry shuts down for the Ides. So don't joke about that. All right. If you want to know more, we'll have to save that for like a little segment of our After Dark or something where we'll talk about why. But otherwise, just so you know.
Next week, maybe.
Yeah. But as I said, we're not here to talk about all that. We are here to talk about After Image, third episode of the seventh season. Um, do you want to give the recap or do you want me to do it?
I'm happy to do it. Um, do you not want to? You said it in this interesting way.
I was like, I know that you did it like the last time or whatever. But I don't
Well,
like
I,
this
I thought
episode
I
at
thought
all.
I thought you had, but I'm happy to let you do it. I mean, you go for it.
And I was gonna say I don't like this episode.
Oh, you
I
don't?
don't like it at all.
Okay.
I don't.
Well,
I
I
don't.
did like it actually, so I'll do it. I'll do it.
Okay, go ahead.
This will be fun. All right, here we go. All right, so this episode, After Image, is primarily focused on our new Dax Esri. She is new to the station, obviously, after the events of the last episode. Benjamin Cisco, he offers her a permanent job on the station. She is a counselor, but she's not yet fully empowered. She's still a training counselor, and so she doesn't know if she wants to stay or not, or go back to the ship that she's from, the Destiny, I believe. Um, but while she's on the station, she does get to know some or to interact with some of our old crew. But it's primarily Worf that she's having some strange interactions with. Of course, Worf was married to Jadzia, and he doesn't really talk to her. He'll like look at her, like he walks into Quarks while she's there, and then leaves Quarks immediately after seeing her. And of course, Esri has all these memories of all the various former hosts, but she, knows Worf the most. But she's not Jadzia, so she's not just running back to the old relationship. And those of us who remember, I think it was in the season 4 episode when she had a former when Jadzia Dax met a former symbiote. There was a
True
woman who
symbiont,
hosts. Yeah, there was a
Lenara,
woman who was
Lenara
hosting.
Khan.
Exactly. And they were contemplating rejoining or to reinitiating a romantic relationship, even though the hosts, Jadzia and the other
Lenara.
woman, were not the same hosts that the symbiotes had originally. So, anyway, point being is that you're not supposed to meet former romantic partners and go back into that old relationship. Now, of course, Quark and Bashir have, for the last several episodes, been, reminiscing on their affections for Jadzia Dax. And Ezri at one point is sitting down to a drink with Bashir. And she tells Bashir that if Worf hadn't come along, it would have been him, as she says. And
Ugh.
that, yeah, and that she liked the flirting. And Julian is surprised by all that, like depressed surprise. Quark, tries to be a little more, well, Quark does Quark things. But anyway, with Bashir, like he says, you have Jadzia's eyes. And she says, quit flirting with me. I know what you're doing. But anyway, the major thing, though, that's going on amongst all the rest of all that is that Garrick is working on decoding Cardassian communications for the Federation war effort. And while he's been doing all this decoding, he's been experiencing panic attacks as claustrophobia panic attacks. We remember that episode where he was captured by the Dominion and he had to go in that, crawl space to help them escape. And so we learned about his claustrophobia before, but this time he's not actually, in enclosed spaces. He is just basically having these unexplained panic attacks expressing themselves as claustrophobia. So Ezri, as this counselor, is told by Cisco, well, why don't you try and help him? And she does seem to kind of have a breakthrough at first with him, where she finds out that, well, she first talks about herself, about how she is currently experiencing space panic attacks, like open
Space
spaces,
sickness.
space sickness. But she knows that she's feeling that way because one of her former hosts feels, self-recrimination for his own actions that caused his death. And while talking with Garrick, we learned that, he was punished by his father, the leader of the Obsidian Order, whose name was
Inabrintain.
Anabrintain. Thank you, Perry. Anabrintain would punish Garrick as a child by putting him in a closet. Garrick says that, I wasn't afraid of the closet because I knew I belonged there, that I would be allowed out once I learned my lesson. But Ezri points out that, oh, okay, you were punishing yourself. You punish yourself in those moments. You're somehow punishing yourself right now, and that's why you're experiencing these panic attacks. And so that does initially seem to help Garrick, but then he has a massive falling off the wagon. He goes back and goes into an airlock and is like banging on the outer airlock. Like he wants to escape so bad. He wants to escape into space, clearly having a mental breakdown. So Ezri brings him to the Hollow Suites, and they look out over a beautiful sunset over some water. Of course, Garrick is this is just a Hollow Suite. This isn't the real thing. But Ezri's like, well, hey, at least this is something. So she's trying to use her counselor abilities to help him out, and of course, she is still very awkward about it this whole time. But when Garrick later is out of the Hollow Suite and she comes to him again, he really starts yelling at her and says some unpleasant things about how
Yeah.
she is a failure and she's pathetic and he doesn't want her help anymore. And so Ezri kind of has her own little mental breakdown, and she goes to Cisco after crying and says, I don't even want to be in Star Trek or Star Trek. I don't
There you
want to
go.
be in the Federation anymore. Excuse me. I don't even want to go back to my old ship. I don't want to be in the Federation. I want to go back to Trill. And Cisco really lets her have it. He says, "All right, the Dax symbiote's already lived 8 full lives. If you want to go be a useless Trill back on your home planet and give up everything you have here, go right ahead." And so she is even more distraught in some ways after that. But finally, Worf comes to her as she's packing, getting ready to leave, and he tells her that as much as he's pained by the situation that's going on, he knows that Jadzia wouldn't want her to leave the station on his behalf. That while he will do what he can to try and maintain a good relationship with her, it's not going to be pleasant and easy for him. But he wants her to stay, so she decides to stay. And once again, Garrick has another breakdown, and she's there to help him. And we come to realize why he's been having these breakdowns. It turns out that Garrick, by helping decode these Cardassian communications to help the Federation, he is helping the Federation attack Cardassia, and that means Cardassians are going to die. While the Federation might benefit from his efforts, and that might, on some level, bring the end of the war, he knows that Cardassians, especially because they're under the control of the Dominion, are going to be forced to fight to the bitter end, and that means that Cardassia is going to suffer. And as a loyal Cardassian in his heart of hearts, he is torn up by this, and so that was expressing itself in this uh, panic attack about claustrophobia. So now that he has an understanding of what's causing that, he's able to kind of get a grip on it. Esri, as she has been accepted by the others and is proven to actually have been helpful for Garrick, decides she wants to stay. Cisco never actually turned in her resignation letter. He knew that she would come back because turns out that this tough love is what Curzon had done for him once upon a time. So he knows that she just needed a kick in the butt to get back in gear. And so the episode ends with Esri getting her promotion to the rank of lieutenant and full acceptance as a counselor. And yeah, that's the episode. So hope I
Yeah.
didn't overdo it there, give too much many details.
No, I mean you hit the high points, and I
Yeah.
mean there might have been a little bit, but at the same time, 30-year-old show, you should know by now. So, and if you haven't seen it, go watch it. Every episode is now available on Paramount Plus. You can go and stream it at your leisure, and then come and see if you agree with anything that we said, or if you didn't,
Right.
and let us know. I mean, it doesn't change how we feel about it, but I mean, it's nice to know. Nice to know.
Right.
So, um, you are a first time viewer. You said you liked this episode. I would love to hear
Yeah.
your thoughts. Why?
I like this episode not so much for the Esri part. I'll get to that. I like this episode more for the Garrick part. The Garrick storyline here actually is really deep. We know so much about Garrick now. He is a character that's popped up regularly, but we know who he is. We know that he was deeply involved with the Obsidian Order, that he is a spy master of extraordinaire. We also know that he's loyal to Cardassia. That whatever it was, we've never gotten full details, but whatever it was that caused him to be, exiled from Cardassia was not something that he did because he hates Cardassia. He's not some sort of self-loathing Cardassian. He is Cardassian through and through and makes no apologies. Um,
That's
he,
a great point. Go ahead.
yeah,
I'm agree.
he having this breakdown because he is personally trying to reconcile his choice about helping the Federation break Cardassian code secret messaging, their coding system, because apparently he helped design it, um, is causing him a lot of trauma. So I mean, I can imagine like in World War II, if you had a German that had lived in the Nazi Germany on some level and had come to somehow help the Allies in the attack on Nazi Germany, yes, he's helping defeat Nazi Germany, but that means that German citizens are affected and killed. And how do you reconcile those two things? So I really like that storyline. When he yells at Esri and says all those nasty things, he ends it by saying, "Now please leave before I say anything that's not very nice
Yeah,
or rude or whatever he
kind.
says."
But please leave before I say something unkind.
Yes,
It's
that
like,
was it.
yeah,
Yeah, just a great line. Garrick in this episode was great. Now I like Esri in the sense that first off, I'm going to say it now. Nicole
De Boer,
DeBoer,
Nicole De
man,
Boer.
she's got that cute little pixie look, and I'm sorry to objectify anybody, but she was real cute, and I like cute, and Jadzia was lovely and beautiful, and I'm not taking anything from her, but having this cute little pixie haired young lady run around saying, "Please love me," I was like, my heart goes out to you. So there's that. However, I do have to criticize the character quite a bit. The idea that she is a counselor and that part of what she's having to deal with in this episode is like her confidence about being a counselor. And then Cisco's response being like, "Well, you have 300 years of experience as 8 different other people, so you're qualified to be a counselor." I'm like, there are a number of jobs that like require serious training that 800 years of lifetime may not have given you time to learn. So, I mean, I get it, but maybe it seemed a little oversimplified. So,
Well, so to take what you just said there, lots of jobs you can have, 8 lifetimes, and still not be qualified. I mean, none of us have 8 lifetimes. So you do feel that after a certain amount of study and accreditation, this person should be able to do the job. And I think that that's ultimately the point that Cisco is trying to make here. As we know, she had not finished her training yet. However, she was almost done. She had
sure.
months left. It wasn't like they interrupted her like she had only had maybe 6 months of training out of a 4 year long program, and they were something like, 6 months is enough. Come on,
Right.
Lieutenant.
Right.
That's not what happened. It was the other way around. She did the years of training
Right.
and she was months away from the promotion she was going to get anyway.
Right.
And they just sped up the process. And the only reason that they had to do that was because um, the implantation of the symbiont threw her off. We
Right.
never met Esri before she was Esri Dax. We
Right.
don't know what she was like before then. She could have been a very calm, very competent person who was
Right.
well on her way to being a very successful psychologist. We don't know. We
Right.
don't know what Esri was. So to see this nervous, she's flitting in and out of thoughts of, Jadzia, Tarias, Turan, all these people standing on her head because Emily did it, like all those things are throwing her off of her game, and she's having to relearn all those. And by the way, this will be about the only time you ever hear me defend Esri because no,
She's
um,
not going to be a favorite of yours, is
she's
that?
not. She's not. And you know
Oh boy.
what? And I've realized a long time ago that it's not necessarily her fault. The fact is, I loved Jadzia. I loved everything about that character. I was always wanting there to be more for Jadzia than we ever really got.
Right.
And the fact that here we are in the end game of a show, having to get to know an all new character that's like as Worf says, she's not Jadzia, and yet she is.
Right.
Like it's annoying. Like if they had found another way to introduce this character, if it had been maybe earlier on in the season runs, maybe we had 2 or 3 seasons to get to know her, not this jam-packed nonsense in the last season, maybe the character would have stood a chance. But this shoehorning it in, and it almost feels like it's just an extra added insult to not only Jadzia but also to Terry. They
Yeah,
were
I
like,
totally agree. Yeah.
yeah, to prove a point that you are replaceable, we are going to replace you with this cute pixie that everybody feels is more accessible than the statuesque Jadzia was. I don't like it. I don't like it.
And I want
So
to be very
I've
clear.
never liked
I totally agree with that. If Terry Farrell had left on
at
any
her own
other,
choosing, of her own merit, they had made an amicable decision to split,
yes, yes,
that would be different. But she was
right,
essentially forced out. And it's one of those things that, I think another part of it that gets me too, it's like we didn't find out about it until several years later. Like it's just jarring. Like it never made sense. and
right,
then to find out years later that it was not her choice, and that basically they were just like, "Psh, you know, if you don't want to work for us, you're no one. You have no talent. You're
right.
gonna end up, you know, busting tables." Or what did he say? I think he said told her she was gonna be a cashier at Kmart. When and all she was asking was to just be a recurring character,
Yeah,
not be stuck on set all day every day when they
yeah,
don't use her. That's all she asked.
yeah. I mean,
So
she had been
yeah,
she would have been fine as a Garrick, Jake
right,
Cisco style character.
absolutely. You
We
know,
could have given
we
her any reason. She's pregnant with a kid, and she's like,
right. The pregnancy would have been a great way to give her an out to not be around as much.
yeah,
You know,
it's a
she's a
Trill
Trill
Klingon
Klingon
hybrid.
hybrid. She's got to go back to the Trill homeworld, and she's joined. We have no idea what that's going to do. When you know, she's got to go back and she's got to have some tests run and whatever else. So she's gone for a couple of days a week or whatever it is.
Yeah,
Or you know, the Dominion War is heating up, and they've sent her on a long-term convoy deployment or something, or any number of things they could have done with the character to keep her around, and we would have been fine with that as viewers.
right,
But to just kill her, unceremoniously kill her, useless death, meaning nothing death, you know, again another symbol of the Berman genius. You know, meaningless
yeah,
death, and now we have this new character here.
right,
um just absolutely bothers me.
right,
um I also I like that you pointed out the Garrick storyline being your favorite part of this, because it's
yeah,
one of those that actually a lot of people found more annoying about this episode, because it's very easy to say this episode is about Esri. Yes, Garrick is in it, but the episode is about Esri. It's about her establishing herself with these other characters that we have come to know and love
right,
so well, and how she fits
right,
with them. And Garrick is just kind of an afterthought in all of this, even though he gives a stellar performance. Or Andrew
yeah,
Robinson gives a stellar performance here. Um, but yeah, I just didn't like it, and I'm gonna okay. Let me just tear this apart real
go
quick.
for it, go for it, go for it.
All right. If I could, I would completely redo this episode top to bottom.
Sure,
The Esri aspect of it, trying to insert her into this world, I would have made that the focus of her and Garrick's interactions, while everything else that happens with the other characters is surrounding that. So, like when she has to, when she first gets the assignment from Cisco, you know, and she's kind of dealing with this whole Worf, Bashir, and everybody else, I would have made them more having to deal with it without her input. So, like for example, what I mean by that is when she has the drink with Julian, and she ends up holding his hand briefly, and because she knows that he, you know, is missing Jotzi and everything, and we know that Worf oversees this. When Worf goes to confront Julian in the infirmary later, I'd have made that scene much longer. I would have had Worf calling him out on his hypocrisy, like kind of what we missed out on the episode before, where they went and did the thing to honor Jadzia to send her to Stovacor. You know,
yeah,
it's
yep,
been like, you know, you wanted to claim that you were her friend, but you were never really her friend. You were after her. You wanted her as your lover, your wife, your
right,
girlfriend, whatever. And so now for you to, who you know, I allowed you to come on this very emotional, spiritual thing
right,
for Jadzia, honoring her memory, and now here you are trying to basically screw the next best thing
right.
to Jadzia. It's disrespectful to say the least.
Yeah, you
And
didn't
you know,
come to me and say, "I'm having like I am curious about this Esri character. How
right,
are you feeling about it?"
right.
Yeah, yeah.
Like in regardless, and that's the other part of this. Like I feel like everybody was disrespecting Morph left and right, because it's just like
They
they want to,
always do. That's my
yeah,
problem.
they're wanting to be like, oh well, we're just going to accept her or whatever else. But I mean, you've known Worf for far longer than you've known Esri. Like, why wouldn't you? And if you want to say that Worf is your friend in any regard,
Right,
why wouldn't you have gone to Worf and say, how do you feel about this? Like,
Right.
I don't want to upset you. Yes, we just shared this very personal, very tragic thing. You lost your wife, I lost my friend. Now there's this person here. We're not trying to be rude to the person, but you as our friend, we want to show deference to you. We want you to
Right.
lead us with this a little bit, you
Now,
know?
let me push back a little bit. Let's say that happened, but we know Worf. Worf is a character who doesn't like other characters coming and asking him questions. Like he wouldn't have
He
responded with like a deep "here's my inner thoughts" kind of
I
way.
don't
At
think that
least not
that's
at first.
I don't think that that's true. I think that like maybe the old Worf, like TNG Worf, he would have definitely been the whole "leave me alone," right?
Right.
Like just I don't want to be bothered. But we have seen Worf grow over time, and we've seen him adjust to being around humans and just other aliens in general, and he knows that he can't always act that way.
Right.
And I think that in this situation, especially when it's something so personal, like when it's professional stuff, like he's always kind of been like, yeah, you should know your job. Why are
Right.
you asking me? You should know your job. But when it comes to very personal stuff, family stuff, he's always been at least willing to hear the other person and talk to them. O'Brien shows that in this episode when O'Brien
Sure.
comes to him and at first Worf didn't want to talk to him, but
Right.
then when he said that it was about Ezri and Jadzia, he
He
listened.
did talk. That's
Yeah.
true. That's true. You're right.
So again, I feel like that is what Bashir should have done. Like, yeah, he's missing Jadzia, what or so he says or whatever. But as soon as there was anything else going on there, he should have gone to Worf and been like, I want to talk to you about this. I want to make sure that no matter what happens, at the very least, you and I still have some kind of mutual respect and understanding. Because it's
Right.
clear they were intimating already that Esri is kind of interested in Bashir in this episode. She's talking about how he could be quite charming. Don't flirt with
Yes.
her because she can't tell the difference the way that Jadzia could. So
Right.
she's already aware that she thinks he's attractive and that whatever. Uh, and then she says, if Worf hadn't come along, it would have been you. So it's almost like she's teeing up the fact that,
Now it
there
is.
was a latent right, there was a
Yeah.
latent attraction there even with Jadzia, which is a problem. She never should have said that.
Yeah.
That's the other and that's
Well,
another
and
again,
Bashir was definitely responds with like a "oh my gosh" kind of
yeah.
response.
And we don't know how good Worf's hearing is. He's standing right up there. Did he hear her say that or not?
Right.
But again, she should never have said that.
Right.
And I feel like there's so many different ways in which this whole episode was just a blatant disrespect towards Worf, and I would have cut all of that from this episode and made this episode about finding a way to move forward from a tragedy with some grace, some dignity, and definitely respect for the widow left behind,
Right.
but everybody's just like, "Oh, it's just big old Klingon Worf. His
Yeah.
feelings don't matter. We'll
Yeah.
just we'll
Well,
give him some blood wine and make him fight somebody, and he'll be all right." Like it's
yeah.
just
When O'Brien
it's
brings the flask, he's like, "Oh no, not again."
yeah, it was just oh no, not again. Right? Hey, that's exactly what he says.
Yeah. I want to say this. So my approach to this episode, of course, is without the external knowledge about what's going on with the show. It's just purely for the show's sake.
Hmm.
So my take on it is from that perspective. But I want to really hone in on the she shouldn't have said that to Bashir. That's what I'm getting at with the like she's supposed to be a counselor, and yet her problem in this episode is the oversharing, the talking too much, the being frazzled. Now, again, she's experiencing being joined and she hadn't been trained for it. So, on that level, I get it. But I think it's been an interest. I'm concerned that it was a mistake, at least for this early part of her character, to have made her a counselor. Maybe it was better than having her being the science officer because we couldn't figure out how to make that work, and counselor might have a better chance of figuring something out. But it makes her character in this episode clash. She is supposed to be trained and skilled on the counselor end, and yet she herself, as Garrick points out, like she needs some counseling. So
That was actually a
that's
really funny scene when she comes in there and just kind of starts. babbling about, Tarius and his death and how it makes her feel and the seasickness and or space sickness and all the rest of it. And
Right.
he said, you sound like you need, and I
Yeah.
laughed. I laughed. I was like, he's absolutely right, because I was listening to it, and it's been so long since I've watched any of these season 7 episodes. It's almost like a first viewing for me in a sense. And when that part was happening, I remember thinking, oh my God, she never shuts up.
Yeah.
And then when he said that, I was like, yeah, absolutely. She needs help.
Well, you know what was funny about that scene though? For me, like my attempt to try and reconcile what was happening in that scene specifically was that she was using her counseling skills to, relate to Garrick. But that's not how the episode actually presents that scene. It's like
No.
she's just babbling.
Right.
And
And
then it
everything
just
that she says to
happens
him, right. And
to
and
work.
what he
Yeah.
gives her, well, what he gives her is very superficial at best. And she latches onto it, and she really kind of pushes the narrative, and he just lets her.
Right.
Because I mean, parts of it, like a lot of what Garrick is, parts of it were true. We don't know exactly how much, but it was enough that it got her feeling better about herself and calmed down and feeling like she accomplished something. And then she
Right.
took off,
Right.
you know. And then here he is, right back where he started with the whole situation. So again, I was just like, I would redo a lot of this. I
Mhm.
would have liked to see that scene where maybe she starts to recognize that she's babbling, rambling here,
Right.
but then do like what you were just kind of intimating here, is that it actually was a clever ruse on her point to get him to
Yeah.
start talking and to loosen him up to, from the deflection that he was doing, and
Right.
to reveal a little bit more than just, oh, he was shut in the closet, oh, his father was, rather strict. Like, give us more, because we've been wanting more on Garrick for a while, and
Yeah.
we know he's infamous for the double talk and everything else. So for her to be the one to bring out a little bit more from him after all this time, I think would have also enhanced the complexity of her character, because it's like, yeah, she's battling with being recently joined,
Right.
but when she is doing her job, we can see a spark of that focus
Right.
come through. We can see the talent there a little bit. But they didn't do that. They didn't do that at all.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, again, the reason I liked her storyline was I again, her storyline is I'm someone who's I want to be loved, and she's lovable because she's this cute little pixie person. Like that's, and I'm just talking about the
The
actress
visuals,
herself.
yeah,
Yeah, and so it's just part of me is like, oh, I want to make you feel better because I'm also that person. I'm also that kind of like if someone like around someone like her or someone similar to her came to me and was like, I'm feeling uncomfortable and I need help. Like my reaction would try and be to offer something. I would probably fail because I don't know what I'm doing. But anyway, that was just I liked
now
her as an actress. I think she was fine in this role within the storyline of Deep Space Nine. This is a interesting choice, and maybe it'll come. Something will come of it. Now, again, that's forgetting all the external stuff and how Terry Farrell was treated. But yeah, I mean, again, the reason I like this episode was the Garrick angle. Everything that happened with him,
yeah,
Esri. It's definitely a mixed bag. I mean, there's some fun stuff. Like we had the revelation that apparently Worf is intimidated by Cisco, and Cisco really is pleased to hear that.
I would, yeah, yeah, pleased and surprised. He was, yeah, he definitely enjoyed that, which again, just again is showing Esri being the oversharer. It's
Hmm.
like, I'm pretty sure that the only reason why she knows that is because that is something that Worf told Jadzia in the deepest of confidences,
Right.
and that is, it's like, what kind of memories are you able to have and access that you can't tell that that was a very private, intimate moment between a husband and wife, and here
Yeah.
you are just blurting it out. Like,
Yeah.
you're still a person. You're
Right.
also a counselor. You don't know the difference between what should be private versus public information.
Right.
Come on.
Yeah.
And she's
Well,
just,
Well,
ugh.
the other part of that too is like I don't know if if Worf ever said I'm intimidated by Cisco. I can imagine he might have like insinuated, "I respect him deeply,"
Yeah,
and to in turn, "I respect him very much" into intimidation.
yeah,
I
and
feel like she might have
or
actually oversold what Worf might have
yeah.
actually said. Yeah,
I agree with that too. I agree with that says because I don't think Worf has ever been intimidated by anybody. I mean, he told Picard he would kill him. So, and if there was ever, if I'm serious, he did. He told Picard
yeah,
he had the exact line: "If you were any other man, I would kill you where you stand." It was a great moment, you know. So I don't see Worf being intimidated by Cisco. Being more like you said, very he respects Cisco. He wouldn't want to go against Cisco, maybe you know but intimidation kind of implies that he wouldn't fight him,
right.
and that's not true. I think Worf would fight Cisco if there was a need, he'd
Yeah,
fight him, you
yeah.
know.
That's
But
why I feel like yeah, like I'm intimidated by Cisco. I don't think he said that exactly. He might have said respect him a lot.
yeah,
Like
I have a deep respect for him. I find him to be a very honorable man, something along those lines, but not he intimidates me. Like
right.
that is not a line Worf has ever muttered.
Right. And
That's
then for
just no.
Jadzia to think that that might be what Worf is feeling, and then yes, for Esri to then take Jadzia's thought and express it directly to Cisco, yeah, that's again
It's
the
crossing
Esri
several
angle.
yeah, it's crossing
Yeah,
several boundaries, and it
yeah,
and it does, and it also kind of tarnishes Jadzia a little bit
yeah,
because even if this is something that Worf had said at some point, like again, I don't believe that Worf ever said that he was intimidated, but he might have said a few things that Jadzia just summarized into a feeling of intimidation or whatever, which just kind of sees that maybe she mischaracterized her husband's words here, and then here we have Esri completing the circuit of disrespect here by blurting it out to the one person who never should have heard that.
right.
You know, so again, I feel like they should call this one "Garrick has great moments and everyone disrespects Worf." Like that's what the title of this
As
episode
per
really could have been.
usual. Yeah.
hmm we're gonna step on the Klingons' feelings like hard and fast. So
I
get
tell you,
ready.
man,
It
Worf
was
is a
like they
character.
couldn't, yeah,
Like,
they couldn't wait to run through here and just step all over him,
yeah,
and he's
yeah.
supposed to just take it.
And going back to that, when he confronts Bashir, Bashir is all belligerent. Like, um,
Oh, there's nothing going on there. I swear, there's not
yeah,
bullshit.
you
Like
you
that's
have
what I
no
wanted
right,
to say. Right?
or you have no. Did you say something like you have no right to like I can talk to who I want? And I
You
forget
have no
exactly
right
what
to tell
Bashir
me who
says.
my friends, yeah, who I can be
Yeah,
friends with, is what he says.
yeah, and it's like Bashir, bro. Come
It's like
on.
we knew, right? It's like we knew.
Ugh,
And that's always the very I feel like that's always the phrase that is used by the people who, again, we know what you're doing, but they want to still be acting as if we're just friends. We
mhm.
were just friends. You can't tell me who I can and can't be friends with. Okay, sure, but you know that that's not a friendship. You
Right,
weren't entertaining a friendship,
right,
you know so, and then when he says, "And that goes for you too, Ferengi," I was like, "Yeah, get them all,
right,
round them all up."
right,
And
right,
notice that, and if this is just Worf sounding off at people because he's so depressed or whatever else, why wouldn't he have also done the same thing to O'Brien? Notice the two people that caught Worf's ire: Quark, Bashir,
right.
the two people who pursued Jadzia relentlessly.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, you're totally right. O'Brien does a great job when Worf. He's talking with Worf, and he says, "I don't have answers for you." Like that's such a great way to respond to someone in pain. I don't have response. I don't have answers for you. I'm just here to give you some feedback, to show you that I care, that I see you. I don't have the solutions to all your problems, but yeah, good. O'Brien was great in that scene.
yes. Yeah, I think O'Brien does a lot here to um, stop uh, the ass whipping you feel like Bashir really earned with his. I mean, I just like I every time I think every time I think about it, I just feel like we missed several key moments where Worf was justifiably angry and should have confronted Quark and Bashir. That other
Right.
episode where they were taking the mission to Silvercore to get Jadzia to Silvercore. I told you then, like Worf should have definitely, shut. Quark down when he was whining on the ship, and just been like, you weren't deserving. You're just here because what? Like,
Yeah.
you shouldn't have even have bothered to come out here. You weren't worthy of her. You sniffed after her like weird dogs, and you
Right.
still couldn't let the fact that we were married, you still didn't respect our marriage, our joining. You were
Right.
hoping that our marriage failed so that
So,
you'd get another chance
right.
with her. And even in this situation, that's what they're doing. We see Quark teeing up Bashir in the bar. Have you made your move yet? Are you gonna? Can you
Yeah.
handle some competition? Jadzia just died.
Yeah.
Just died. And
Yeah.
already they're plotting their moves. Not in any way respectful of Jadzia, Worf, any of this. And I just don't like it.
Right. Yeah. Quark treated Jadzia like she was the one woman he couldn't get because she just that's all she was. If Jadzia had ever given anything to Quark, any sort of romantic interest, even a kiss on the cheek, he would have taken it. And not because he actually cared for Jadzia, but because he is just taking for himself the pleasure of a woman. Like all the Dabo girls, I'm sure have had to do a thing or two, if you get what I'm saying, to get the job.
Well, certainly in the old days.
Yeah, I mean, even some Umox, is that the ear stuff, the ear massage?
Yes,
I mean, he
yes.
even says in this episode when he's in Doctor Bashir's for a brief like ear thing, don't let an amateur do a tickle something or other.
A
Um,
tympanic tickle.
yeah, and he pulls some sort of weird thing out of his
It
ear.
was a
Like,
feather.
is that what it was?
He pulled a feather out of his
It
ear.
looked like dried gel. I couldn't tell what it was, but
Well, I'm sure it doesn't look that great covered in earwax.
so yeah, it was one of those things where I don't know. I mean, has Quark grown at all in this? I guess he has somewhat on the show, but not in this way.
I mean, he's grown in the show overall, but there are certain aspects of that character that are just never going to change. And his obvious sexual predilections are probably going to be those that don't change. And
Right.
yeah, that's about as much as I want to think about that. So
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just thinking maybe that's what's going on, but yeah. Anyway, trying to think if there's anything else to talk about. I think we covered pretty much everything. Am
yeah,
I missing anything?
no.
I
The
feel like
only
we're
last thing I
we're
could think
done so
of,
early.
yeah. Well, the thing is, I was gonna, like I said, I feel, and this is just a real quick point. I like Nicole DeBoer. I think that she's a great actress. I've seen her in some other things, and even after Deep Space Nine ended, she went on to do a show called The Dead Zone with Anthony Michael Hall. She was great in that show.
Right.
And so, if you were a Nicole DeBoer fan or are a Nicole DeBoer fan, you should definitely go and check it out. And I've also, you know, there are any number of Star Trek books out there readily available, and there are a lot that continue on with certain characters after Deep Space Nine. And there's a whole series developed that is devoted to Esri and what happens to her after DS9 ends. And I've read a few of them, and the way that that character is later developed is actually pretty nice.
Cool.
The character also turns up again in Star Trek Online, has a couple of missions that you get to play with both Esri and Dr. Bashir. So you can go and check those out as well. Again, a lot of development goes into the character over time, which really rounds the character out, which is always going to be fundamentally missing when you introduce a character in the final season of a show like this.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's that's probably the only way that anybody's really going to get around it. Now, way back when, as we like to talk about the 90s and stuff, when this all went down, there was a lot of Esri hate. And when the show ended and conventions for the DS9 cruise started, a lot of people did not like Esri, didn't want Nicole DeBoer around.
Mhm.
She is talked about kind of having a very cold reception from the fans, but it has warmed over time.
Right.
As much as I may have disliked things about the character, I would never go to a convention and like, you know, be rude to any of
Right.
the actors who played on the show or anything like that. Um, and I just like I just want to make that very clear. I do not hate Nicole DeBoer. I just think that the way that they did the introduction of the character and the treatment of Jadzia and the overall story of Dax was severely shortchanged here. And I
Right.
think as we see later on going through other episodes throughout the seventh season, there are going to be a lot of things that I feel like they could have done with Jadzia, which would have helped the character even more. And it's kind of upsetting that they didn't do that.
Right.
Um, Now, Vincent, to answer your question real quick, do you think the better explanation for Esri's rapid promotion was wartime manpower shortages? The answer is no. The reason being, she was in the final stages of a counselor training program where she would have been promoted anyway upon completion of the program. All Cisco did was he accelerated her whole process. She didn't have to wait the final 3 months for the promotion. He got her what she needed, and she got the rank. So no matter what, she was going to be a lieutenant. Again, he just sped this up because he wanted her to stay.
I will say though that I do think I don't know if there would have been some sort of test or confirmation that she had to go through to get that final promotion. Maybe she wouldn't have, and Cisco just advocating was truly enough. I just think this episode did reveal, again, part of the reason this episode did have some trouble is because it did feel like her character was at an immaturity level, not conducive to a full blown counselor. That's what
Yeah.
I was trying to say earlier. I don't think I put it in
Well,
those words, but yeah,
and yeah, and as I said earlier, I really feel like and Vincent says here, he says that she was straight up unstable and unfit for service. Again, that is something that happened to her as a result of the joining. We never
sure.
got to
Yeah,
see or Esri.
that's
We
true.
never got to see her before she was joined. We don't know what she was like. So trying to, reintegrate all these lives into your life when it's not something that she was ever trained for. Not every trill is joined. Not every trill goes through the initiate program the way that Jadzia did. So there's a long bit of training that Esri never gets. And
Mhm.
it's not something that she can suddenly go back and do because once you're joined, you're joined. They can't take the symbiont out of you without
Yes.
killing you. So
Yeah.
she's really got no choice here. So we do have to cut her a lot of slack for how unstable she appears because this is a massive and permanent lifetime adjustment that she's having to make in very short order. And to be around all these people who have like been living with each other for at least 7, 8, 10 years,
Right.
working together, struggling, wartime, all this stuff, and trying to fit this brand new, bright, fresh faced, youthful person into all that
Right.
is hard. Um, I don't know if they actually say how old she is, but at one point, Worf calls her an ensign. We know that she gets the promotion to lieutenant. I'm going to assume that she is somewhere around 28, 29 years old.
Well, if the show was out in the season 7 is
Well, I'm talking about the
98.
character.
Well,
I'm talking about
I
the
know.
character.
I'm just saying that the actress, she was born in 80, so if or was it 80? Am I reading that right? She was born in 1970, excuse me. So she would have been in her mid to late 20s as an actress by this point.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And they typically keep people, kind of around their
Yeah.
actual ages for obvious reasons. You can't be 28 playing a 14-year. Well, I mean, some people, who knows? I don't know. But anyway, so yeah, I'm going to assume she's about 28, 29. That would make her closer to Jake's age than anyone else
Yeah,
because what Bashir by now is what, mid 30s,
at
I think.
least. Yeah.
So because I think he was about also 29, 30 years old when the show started.
Mhm.
And yeah, so I mean, he's mid to late 30s. And yeah, so
Yeah.
it's a lot of an adjustment to make. And I just wish that more had been done to um, give more respect to Worf in
Mhm.
this episode as the grieving widow. It's pretty much like she's the one struggling. Worf, get over it. Like that's what they should have called this episode. Worf, get over it, because everything is all about like his wife is recently dead. He's packing up her stuff in his quarters, and what's he gonna do? Give it to her? Is it technically Ezri's?
Right.
Like what? Like how does any of that work? And he's got to figure that out. She should have gone back on the Destiny. To be honest, they shouldn't have kept her around. You need a
Right.
counselor. You think it's appropriate the station has a wartime counselor? Okay, fine. They can have a wartime counselor. Someone else. Someone who is not the embodiment of the station captain's best friend and the strategic command officer's dead ex or dead wife. That would make a lot of sense.
Right. Yeah.
Jeez, rough. Well, yeah, I think that does wrap it up for this
Yeah.
episode.
It's funny.
Um,
Episodes where like we have something to say, like we can go on, and that this isn't what we
ah,
have something to say, but like it also was so clear what I wanted to say that like
uh,
it's out.
yeah, and it was so clear for me too. 'Cause like I said, I was watching it, and I was just like, every couple of scenes, I just be like, once again, just why are y'all shitting on my man Worf? Like that's what I just kept saying over and over again. Once
I'm
again,
so with
here they
you.
come.
I'm so with you on that. Worf
Oh, I
is
just
some at some point someone needs to apologize to Worf for crying out loud.
Yeah, I mean, and we've talked about it. We this show they call it, O'Brien must suffer. And don't get me wrong, O'Brien has a lot of suffering moments in here. But I really feel like when Worf came on, they were like, "Oh, thank God, we've got a giant Klingon target we can now throw darts at for the rest
Right.
of the season." Because when's the last time O'Brien's really suffered? But Worf has really been carrying that mantle
It's
here.
funny. Once again, I was some clip from TNG came up on my YouTube feed, those shorts they have.
Hmm.
And it was some I don't even know who it was, but Worf had to get his butt thrown on the bridge. I don't know what episode it was. I think it was like season 5, something or other. I don't even know who it was that threw him, but everyone in the comments was like, Worf always has to take a beating to show you how bad the baddie is.
Yep, that was
Ugh,
always the thing. That's how you knew that the big bad was the big bad because they took
yeah.
down the Klingon every time. Or,
He was the
you know,
emotional and physical pincushion for
mhm,
everybody. Ugh,
used to annoy me so much. It's like y'all want me to believe these people are fantastic at their jobs, and yet, without fail, they're the first ones taken out like every time. And they do it on all of the Trek shows: Next
right.
Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager. Tuvok was forever being knocked out, susceptible to something or whatever. I'm like, my gosh, can the dude win one? Can his security features just hold up, be
Right.
solid, stop the big bad from getting through. Just one time, show me that that person was smart and successful at their job, and I'd be happy. But no, every time it's well. How'd they walk through your shield, Mr. Worf? Well, I wasn't planning on, being deborgified over here by the whatever it was, but that's exactly how it plays out every time. Or yeah, when Worf got thrown through the doors by the aging 80-year-old admiral because he's got the thing in his neck,
Yeah.
and the admiral tosses him like nothing. I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
Come on. Yeah, a lot of moments that I just don't agree with. If I ever had to write a show or do a sci-fi show, at least half the time my guys have got to win one, or they're gonna have to really sell me on the baddie being bad. Like, oh,
Right.
we threw up all the shields and everything else, but then they ripped through the bulkhead. I wasn't expecting that. I didn't have a plan for them to drill a hole through the wall to
Right.
get out.
Right.
So something.
Yeah.
Oh, don't get me started on that, Vincent. I try not to go there. Um,
I was
yeah,
too. To be
I
frank.
try not to go there with things like this, but it gets. I will tell you, it gets harder and harder
To be
sometimes.
clear, what Vincent said, people of color too. So yeah, there we
Yes,
go. There it is. Yep.
they
Yep.
tend to be the ones that also are put into these roles: security, enforcer, bouncer, so forth and so on. So
There's always
yes,
a morally upstanding, really great black dude in the middle of some adventure zombie film, and if that guy doesn't die by the end of Act 1 / middle of Act 2,
Mm.
What's your movie, man? Just
Or my other the newer trend of the trope is he's the strong, obvious enforcer who is taken out by the 5'8", 92-pound soaking wet, long blonde, blue-eyed chick
yeah,
who knows super alien karate.
yeah,
So it's just like, I don't care how many backflips you're doing, Cassandra, you're not taking out this dude over here. You're just not doing it. All
yeah,
right.
yeah,
And that's the other part of it that always gets me. Yeah, he's trained for years in every kind of martial art that we know as humans, but here she comes and she does a couple of, you know, weird somersaults and the splits, and suddenly she can take this dude down. Not with it.
right.
Never will be. So, but I'm glad other people see these tropes. That's fun. We should do a whole episode that's just about Star Trek tropes, and that will be, well,
Oh,
that'd be a great episode.
TV tropes. The Star Trek page is long. We could definitely have like multiple episodes just perusing that page.
We are going to have to look through that.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I think that is going to pretty much do it for us on this episode here. We we're not taking any breaks, so we'll be back. I guess the next thing that we're going to be doing, we'll do probably one more episode for season 7, and then after that, we'll do the After Dark for all the various books. I guess we'll just kind of give you a reading rainbow style uh book expo here because we've covered so much. So
Yeah.
if you're interested at all, well, I mean, how do you know unless you tell us, and even if you said you weren't interested, it's our show. We're gonna do whatever we want. You can't stop us. So um, but hopefully you guys enjoy it, and hopefully it inspires you to go and read your own things. And if you are reading various books, whether they're the ones that we've recommended and that we shared with you, or other things that you think that we'd be interested in, please drop us a line. Let us know. Post them on the YouTube page on these videos. Comment section is open, and I would love to see what you're reading. Might find some things that I can check out after I get done with this group of stuff. So until next time, guys, take care of yourselves.
Thanks, guys.